Welcome to another episode of Mike's Money Picks. Today on the podcast, college football is back. And my metaphor for week 0 was that it was a nice little, amuse bouche to the palate of watching college football. Just kind of get our appetites ready, get us ready for the rest of the meal. And week 1 is the start of that meal. Obviously, Saturday is going to be the main course, but we've got ourselves some nice little starters and soups and salads here on the Thursday and Friday night slates, right? And so here on today's episode, we are going to break down the Thursday night DraftKings slate. We're going to talk about all 6 games, tell you what you can expect from each game, as well as who needs to be in or out of your DraftKings lineups for these 6 games. And if you are, just betting or doing player props for these 6 games, a lot of these takes can apply to those as well. At the end of the day, we're here to help you have some winnings here in week 1. And if you listen to us week 0, hopefully you had a pretty good week. I know I had a good week 0, and it was, obviously playing DFS and betting, there's a lot of variance that's involved. You can never guarantee success every single week, but when you put in the time and you research and you construct your lineups in a smart way, that's how you can give yourself the best edge possible. In week 0, it was a good week for me. So I'm hoping to keep up the momentum here in week 1, and I'm hoping to start off here on this Thursday night. If you have not already, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. That way you can be with us for the rest of our episodes for not only the rest of week 1, I'm talking the Friday slate, I'm talking the Saturday slate, but you can be with us for the rest of the season as well. We're also going to have some live shows kind of in and out this season. I'm not going to sit here and guarantee one every single week, but I know we are planning on doing a live show on this channel on Thursday night to talk week 1. And I know we are planning on going on someone else's channel Friday night to do a live show to talk week 1. So if you're subscribed, you will know when all that goes down, and you'll be able to kind of be here and contribute to the comments as well. So like I said, I can't guarantee one of those every single week, but I could pretty much say there's going to be some this week, and you're going to want to be here for those because it's going to be me talking with others, not just me going solo. So, let's go ahead and end the introduction there. We got 6 games to talk about, so let's go ahead and dive in with game number 1. All right, so game number 1 on the slate is going to be Wyoming taking on Akron, and I got to say, this game is far from pretty, but this is really smart scheduling by both these two teams. It's like, hey, we're awful. We know you're awful. Why don't we play a home and home, and one of us is going to end up with a win each of these 2 seasons? Like on paper, it's a really smart idea for both these teams. I don't know why more G5 teams don't try to go cross conference and try to find the team that's comparable to them and try to get some winnable games on the schedule. So props to both these teams for scheduling this game. Anyway, the point spread in this game is currently Wyoming minus 7.5 with a game total of 50.5 points, which means the implied total is about 29 to 22 in favor of Wyoming. I don't like doing decimals for the implied totals because you can't go out and score 0.5 points on a field. And plus, all those lines are courtesy of FanDuel Sportsbook. Now, for this game, there's a lot of variables going on in this game. I don't think it's one you're just going to want to completely ignore for DFS purposes, but it's definitely a contrast to styles. It's definitely not going to be the most aesthetically pleasing game of the night. And in fact, I think DraftKings probably didn't have to include this one on the slate if they didn't want to, and nobody would have batted an eye. But here we are. We're going to break it down. Wyoming is going to be starting quarterback Caden Anderson. He ended the season last year as the starter. He only had one game north of 11 DraftKings points last year, but it was 33 DraftKings points against New Mexico, who was one of the worst defenses in all of FBS football. Look, Wyoming is a team that loves to ground and pound, so I just don't see a whole lot of upside in playing Caden Anderson. I do want to play one of the Wyoming running backs, but here's the problem. Is we just don't know who's going to end up being the starter. There was a big old or tag for the 3 running backs here for Wyoming. We don't know which one's going to start. There's Sam Scott, who is a returning player for Wyoming that could end up being pretty good. He's listed as the starter, but will he actually be that? I don't know. And then you've got Charlotte transfer Teron Kelman, who's going to be vying for the starting job as well. He's kind of like a smaller, elusive type of back. He could be getting some reps. And then you've also got Demaja Harris from North Texas, who might be playing a factor as well. So here's the deal with these 3 guys. When it comes to playing DraftKings lineups, right? You don't really want to have to guess on something like a starting running back, because if my logic is, Wyoming's going to be running the crap out of the ball, I want Wyoming rushers, you want to only have to be one of them, right? Because think about it. If I'm playing 10 lineups and I were to be playing a Wyoming running back in 6 of them. That's 60% exposure. That's quite a lot. But if I were to even it out and go 2, 2, and 2, then I'm only getting to kind of 2 bullets in the chamber for each of those 3 running backs. So it just makes it a situation that, yes, there's upside in targeting it because Akron plays with a Wyoming plays with a massively high rush rate. They're ranked 48th in the nation in rush rate in 2024. But the problem is that we just don't really know who's going to be the guy. And it just kind of begs the question of, do you really want to invest some of your lineup into like players that just end up not doing anything, right? I think it's a situation that's worth targeting if you're playing enough lineups, but I would not recommend it if you're doing like a single entry or a 3 max. The wide receiver position, look, Wyoming just does not throw the ball enough to really warrant playing a lot of guys at wide receiver. I will tell you the starters, though. Chris Durr Jr. is the starting slot. He was the most consistent player among the starting wide receivers for them last year in terms of volume. Then you've also got Jalen Sargent, who's kind of like their big play guy at the wide receiver position. And then you've also got as the third starter, Michael Fitzgerald, who is priced at the Stowe minimum on DraftKings. And then you've got tight end John Michael Gillenborg, who's really the wide receiver one. This guy's a really good athlete. He's going to play on Sundays. He's a big time part of this offense. Really, like I said, kind of like their wide receiver one, just from the tight end position. When he's been healthy the last few seasons, he's been pretty good for them. And obviously, he's healthy for this game. I think he's a little bit overpriced on DraftKings, but if you're playing anybody from the passing game for them, for me, it would be Gillenborg. Now, whereas Wyoming is going to try to ground and pound and grind the clock, Akron plays like the exact opposite style. Joe Moorhead is their head coach, even though he's like 8-28, I believe his record is. And Akron's actually not allowed to participate in a bowl game this year because of their APR academic scores, which honestly, I was talking to one of my friends about this the other day. If you know you're about to run into that issue, why would you not just recruit like these guys with 4.0 GPAs out of the portal and just have them boost your team GPA, even if you have no intentions of actually playing them on the field? Or who cares if you actually do play them on the field? You're not going bowling anyway if you don't boost your GPA. So why not try something like that? I don't know why they haven't. But anyway, that's another story. So this is a team that's going to throw it all over the yard. They're a pretty high team in terms of pass rate. They're ranked 19th in pass rate in 2024. They're also going to play super, super fast in terms of tempo. Their starting quarterback, Ben Finley, is a former NC State transfer. Being local to North Carolina, there were some NC State fans that I know that wanted him to be like the long-term starter before they went and got Grayson McCall, before they got CJ Bailey. And he's not terrible. He had a few games with some upside, 2 games where he topped 29 DraftKings points last year because he gets so much passing volume. Like he's just going to have opportunities to put up DraftKings points. And I think at 5,400 as the cheapest starting quarterback on the slate for the team implied 21 points, like that's not nothing. I think he's going to make my player pool, but I can't recommend him being a big part of it. This is a slate where you actually really have to make a lot of decisions when it comes to your salary allotment, and playing Ben Finley does open up a lot as a $5,400 price quarterback. At the running back position, I don't think Akron's going to run the ball enough for it to matter. They throw the ball over the yard. They don't return their top 2 running backs from 2024. There's no clear running back one for this team right now. It's between Taven Curry, who's formerly of UL Monroe, Jordan Gant, who's from Tennessee State, and Chris G from Colgate. I just not really super interested. If G gets the start, like if we get word that he's out there with the starters in warmups or something, he's $3K minimum. That might have a little interest for me, but it's really hard to get excited about those guys. Now, for the wide receivers, I think there is a room for a little bit of excitement. So Akron did lose their top 3 receivers from last year, but they return Israel Polk, who was a package player last year for them. Probably expected to show up into a bigger role this year. We do not have the depth chart yet, unfortunately, as I'm recording this Monday night. Polk was the 6th leading receiver last year. Their tight end, Jake Newell, was their 4th leading receiver last year. So you have like returners that have contributed to that offense before. They also added Cameron Montero from Pitt. He did not play very much at all at Pitt, but, he is a Power 4 transfer who transferred down. And then Kyan Mason's a guy who played very sparingly last year, who they're apparently pretty high on. So he's at 3,300. He could be an option. But the guy that you're really going to want to get to, which is the same because he's so expensive, is Alex Adams. He was super productive for this team back in 2022 and 2023, but he's just been hurt. He did not play at all last year. And if he's healthy, which he should be for this one, he's going to be pretty good, and they're going to throw the ball a ton, and they're going to have success. The problem is he's $6,200, so you really have a decision to make. Like, hey, do I really want to play a $6,200 receiver from Akron? Like, I'm telling y'all, he is good. He is going to be the guy as long as he's fully recovered from his injury, which he should be. All indications are he is. But he's a pricey play for a guy from Akron. All right, next up, a game that is very, very important in my home state of North Carolina, ECU taking on NC State. The spread in this one is NC State minus 11.5 points with a game total of 59.5. That means the implied total is about 35-24 in favor of the Wolfpack. Now, what's interesting about these two teams is that they actually played last season in a bowl game. The most recent game either of these two teams played was against each other, but that was kind of just luck of the draw that they knew they were playing each other in week one, and they just so happened to draw a bowl against each other. You almost rarely, never see that. Now, in that game, ECU won 26-21. It was fairly even in terms of total yards and efficiency metrics for both teams. NC State failed on fourth down multiple times. They also missed a field goal. So they really got the ball into scoring range and just couldn't close. If they had done that, they probably would have won the game. Both teams really, really were effective on the ground. ECU ran for 326 yards. NC State ran for 198 yards. So you just really had a game that was ground and pound by both teams. But I don't know if that's necessarily going to be the case this one. I really think for this game, I'm really leaning and tempted to bet NC State minus that 11.5 points. This is a revenge game for them. They've had this circled. There was a brawl on the field last season when this game ended. And you've kind of got a big brother, little brother thing where NC State is the Power 4 team with guys with a whole lot better recruiting pedigree, just a whole lot better reputation. It's at home versus the ECU, the kind of G5 upstarts that beat them last year. I think NC State's going to come out motivated. They're not going to overlook them, and I really think they're going to beat them pretty good. On the ECU side, they do return their starting quarterback, Caden Hauser. Interestingly enough, for ECU last year, they fired their head coach, Mike Houston, and promoted their DC. This was right after the Charlotte game, heading into the bye before they played Army. And what they did was they made Caden Hauser the starting quarterback, and they kind of unlocked their offense. They started going air raid. They started going no huddle. They started just kind of becoming just this really high-octane offensive machine at the end of the season last year. They averaged 38 points per game in their final 6, which is quite impressive. And Hauser was a big spark for that. In 3 of those games, he was over 31 DraftKings points per game. He just played very, very well down the stretch, right? I think he's a little bit overpriced here on this slate. When you look at what he did in the bowl game against NC State, he was not great through the air, only 147 yards, did not throw for a touchdown, but he was elite on the ground, ran for 84 yards and 2 touchdowns, which are half of his rushing production on the season. So I'm not banking on that again. And I just really think this is a bad spot for Hauser, even though I think he's a good G5 quarterback and will be very good in the American Athletic this season. I just don't think this is a great spot for him at a super big price tag going up against probably the best defense he's going to see all year. At the running back position for ECU, this is a situation where they had their RB1 last year in Rajay Harris. He's gone. This is a play caller in a system that generally wants to lean on one running back, but the problem is we don't know who that one running back is going to be. I doubt we're going to get help with the depth chart in that regard. I have not seen an ECU depth chart yet, but I would imagine that when it comes out, it's going to have a whole lot of the word "or" at the running back position when it comes to London Montgomery, Parker Jenkins, and Marlon Gunn. I just think that this is going to be a committee. London Montgomery, excuse me. I don't want to keep calling him Landon. He was the RB2 last year, had a few pretty productive games, but he's been in the system and knows it. Parker Jenkins is a transfer from Houston who just never really got out of the committee there last year. And then Marlon Gunn is also a guy who's been in the system here at ECU. I just don't really know how to handicap it. It's kind of the same way I view the Wyoming backfield where, yeah, there might be a little bit of upside in that running back position, but do you really want to waste 3 times your lineups to get the same exposure to each running back? I just don't think so. Situation I'm probably going to avoid. At the wide receiver position, I do think this is probably one of the most clear wide receiver situations on the slate. You've got the Smiths, Anthony Smith and Yannick Smith, who are returning. And then you've got the Oklahoma transfer, Jaquays Pedway, who's coming in and likely to start in the slot. The Smiths started last year. Their leading receiver, Chase Sowell, is gone. He's at Iowa State. notably not catching passes at Iowa State because they don't want to throw to him for some reason, and messed up on my DraftKings showdown lineups last Saturday, but that's a story for another time. So Anthony and Yannick Smith are both good. Like, they're both verifiably good players. Anthony was overall more productive than Yannick last year, but Yannick had kind of some bad touchdown luck. Yannick is also a better pedigree in terms of recruit. He's a former 4-star. So both of them, I think, are solid targets individually, but on this slate where you've got to really make decisions with salary, both of them are north of $7,000. They're really, really tough clicks to me. Jaquays Petaway from Oklahoma coming in. He's super fast. I just don't trust him at $6,700 either. Like, all three of these guys, I would love if they were just in the 5K range, but they're not. They're in the 7K range, which just makes them really hard to play. On the NC State side, they are returning their starter, CJ Bailey. He was thrown into the fire as a true freshman last year after the injury to Grayson McCall, and he acquitted himself quite well and really improved as the season went on and became a really solid, really reliable option at the quarterback position in DFS. Interestingly enough, NC State did fire their OC after the season, Robert Anai, but they promoted their quarterbacks coach, Kurt Roper, to the OC role, presumably to help continue the development of CJ Bailey and develop the offense with a guy who knows Bailey's skill set and will help CJ Bailey stay around and continue to be a member of the NC State Wolfpack. So I wouldn't expect too much different from this offense in 2025, but now this is like the CJ Bailey offense for sure. Like, it's a system that's going to be built around his skill set. And they're probably going to throw the ball quite a bit. At the end of the season, NC State ranked 55th in pass rate nationally. He's not also a non-factor in the run game. I think that's a skill set that might use quite a bit this year. He supposedly bulked up in the offseason, but when you look at what he did last year, he finished with 22 fantasy points in 6 of his last 7 starts. That's pretty solid. The only problem is here on this slate, like, you always want 3x value from your guys in DraftKings, and at 9,500, you really want him to get like 28, 29 DraftKings points, and he only hit that value once last season against Georgia Tech. So it's just really hard to click him on this slate at that price tag. I feel that way about a lot of quarterbacks, though. But knowing the way NC State's going into this matchup, knowing that he's going to have clear stacking partners, more about that in a second, makes him a little more appealing to play on this slate, and he's probably going to make my player pool. Now, the guy that I love in this game is Hollywood Smothers. He's $7,000 even. He was kind of in the middle of a committee last year with Jordan Waters and Kendrick Raphael, and now he is like the obvious RB1, and he finished the season super strong. They added no competition around him. He's going to be the guy. Last year, he averaged about 7 yards per carry in his final 5 games. He scored over 25 fantasy points in 3 of those 5 games, including the bowl game against ECU, where he had 29 DraftKings points, and he didn't even have a rushing touchdown. He did have a receiving touchdown. I just think this is a great matchup. The NC State Wolfpack should greatly have an advantage on the offensive line against ECU. I think this is a great spot for Smothers. He's probably going to be a core play for me here on this Thursday slate. Now, the receiver position for NC State, they lose Casey Concepcion, they lose Dakari Collins, but they return so many other pieces, it just becomes super obvious who's going to end up being the starters. Noah Rogers is a big-time recruit, transfer from Ohio State. He's from the Raleigh area. Now he's back home. He was the best receiver for them in the bowl game against ECU, had 5 for 59. Justin Jolly is the tight end. He's probably their best offensive weapon, if we're being honest. They use him a variety of ways. He's also a good blocker. He is really solid. He ended up actually being their leader in receiving yards last year, and actually had the highest in yards per reception at over 15, which is quite impressive for a tight end. The problem is that his fantasy outputs were strange, to say the least. He scored in double digits 6 times last year, but he never topped 18 fantasy points in a single game. That makes him really tough to target at a price tag of $6,300, in my opinion. The other 2 starting receivers are going to be Wesley Grimes, who was a Wake Forest transfer, who was a package player last year, and then Terrell Anderson, 4-star recruit. I actually coached against Terrell Anderson for 2 years. He was so good in high school. Like, you just could not cover him, and running man-to-man coverage against him was a death sentence because he just beat it. He was just a really good high school receiver, big-time recruit for them. NC State, they were really excited to get him. He had offers to go to other schools, and now he's $5,200. He's probably going to be the other starting wideout on the other side of Rogers or Grimes. And I really think he's worth a look as well. And I don't think he's going to be very much owned. I think if anybody's playing pieces in this NC State receiving core, they're going to be playing Rodgers or Jolly. And like I said, Rodgers and Jolly make a lot of sense. But if you're looking to reduce ownership, Anderson and Grimes might be two ways you could do that. All right, we're 2 games down. We're going to go ahead and take a quick breather, and then we're going to pick back up with the. Now, before we continue, quick reminder that if you do want more from us, there are places you can get it. First off, follow me on Twitter for all updates about the show, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions if you reach out to me on Twitter. It's at Mike's Money Picks. I mentioned earlier that we're going to have some live streams, and so if you want to know when those live streams are going on, one place I'm going to be letting people know is on Twitter, so it's a great place to follow me and just keep in touch with everything that we got going on. I'm also in the Fantasy Corner Discord. The link is in the description on YouTube as well as on the audio feed. It's 100% free if you're just looking for a community of people to talk DFS with, and I'm talking all sports DFS. It's a great place to go. I cannot recommend enough if you're just looking to build a community to have fun playing DFS with. And then I do write an article on my Patreon for every single college football slate with my core plays as well as why they're my core plays for both DraftKings and FanDuel. So if you are interested in that, head on over to the Patreon and you can get access to that with the football package. All right, now let's go ahead and continue with game number 3, which is a very interesting one in my opinion. It is Jacksonville State taking on UCF. So what makes this interesting is that both of the teams in this game have new head coaches, new coaching staffs, but they're going to play a similar way that they did last year, right? Jacksonville State last year under Rich Rod, one of the fastest teams in the nation, one of the highest rush rates in the nation. Now they've got new OC Clint Trickett, formerly of Last Chance U fame, formerly a backup quarterback at Florida State also. And he previously coached teams at Marshall. And last year, I believe he was at Georgia Southern. The same concept, very fast tempo, very high rush rate. So expect that again. UCF, now they're head coached by Scott Frost. They were previously head coached by Gus Malzahn. Expect very fast tempo, expect very high rush rate. The only thing is that both these teams, with their head coaches leaving, were gutted in the portal. A lot of turnover. And so there's a lot of new faces and a lot of names we need to talk about to know for DFS purposes. For Jacksonville State, their quarterback is Gavin Wimsatt. I like him a lot on this slate at his price tag. He is formerly of Kentucky and Rutgers. He was a starter at Rutgers. I didn't think he was a bad college quarterback. He is limited as a passer, but he has a ton of rushing upside. I think he's perfect for what Jacksonville State wants to do, and I think this is a really good spot for him against a UCF defense that is going to be okay, but not great. So I think $7,200, when you look at all the other quarterbacks on this slate, that's a very reasonable price tag to get a man of Gavin Wimsatt's skill set. Now, at the running back position for Jacksonville State, it appears to be a 2-horse race for the running back spot. Cam Cook is a transfer from TCU who just never really broke out. They decided about halfway through the year last year that they'd just rather put Savion Williams at running back. And then their other one that's going to be contending for a spot is Andrew Paul. He was at Jacksonville State's running back 3 last year. He is a former Georgia transfer. He's got talent. I think both these guys are probably going to see a good bit of run considering how much this team is going to run the ball. At the wide receiver spot, I got to be honest, I'm not interested because they're just going to be running the ball a lot. And Gavin Wimsatt's a better runner than a thrower. So it's just hard to really be interested in them. Their wide receiver 1 for last year, Cam Vaughn, is now at West Virginia with Rich Rod. Their wide receiver 2 and wide receiver 3 were Rex Steiner and Petway. They're back. The problem is that on the unofficial depth chart, Michael Petway was not listed. The starters listed were Rex Steiner, Caleb Coombs. Corey Coombs played somewhere. Where'd I get that name from? That's a name. I'm going to have to look that up later. Caleb Coombs was listed as a starter. He's a transfer from FAU. And then DeAndre Johnson was also listed as a starter as well. But like I said, I'm not super interested in targeting that position. But if you were, Rex Steiner, Johnson, Coombs are the guys you want. Now, on the UCF side, they shocked the world by naming Cam Fancher as their starter. Cam Fancher is a transfer from Marshall and then FAU, who is now at UCF. And he was like, look, I try not to bash college kids on this show because, like, at the end of the day, these are 18 to 22-year-olds who, like, have to attend Econ 305 and then go play football, right? So I try not to bash college kids, but I'm going to be honest. I was never really impressed with Cam Fancher when he was at Marshall. I was never really impressed with Cam Fancher when he was at FAU. Now he's at a Power 4 school, and he's somehow the starter. Maybe he's exactly what Scott Frost wants in his system. I don't know, but you had Taven Jackson from Indiana there. You had Ja'Cory Brown of Miami there, and he went with Cam Fancher as his QB1. Now, Cam Fancher, can run the ball. And in a game where UCF is going to be heavily favored, I just now realized I never did the point spread for this one. UCF 17.5 point favorites with a game total of 52.5 points, meaning the implied total is about 35-17 in favor of UCF. So Fancher's got a ton of upside in an offense with a 35-point implied total. Even if he's not great, you don't have to be great to put up stats in this game, because I think UCF is going to have a major advantage on the offensive line. They were a great offensive line last year. They returned some of it, and they actually backfilled in the portal quite well. So I think the UCF's really going to have an advantage on the offensive line, which should help Fancher out a lot. It should also help out both of UCF's running backs. Miles Montgomery is going to be the starter. He was kind of their RB3 last year behind RJ Harvey and Penny Boom. He's going to be good. I think he's one of the best running back plays on the slate because of how much this team's going to run the ball and how much success they should have it with their advantage on the line. And then Jaden Nixon is his backup. He was a kind of a committee member at Western Michigan last year, played him in some of the action games. He was kind of boom or bust, but Montgomery and Nixon are the two names you're going to want to know for that running back room. And then we don't have an official depth chart for UCF yet, which is just, I don't know why coaches do it. It drives me crazy when coaches do this. Like, you're not gaining an advantage. The scouting department of the other team is going to be scouting every player on your roster anyway. Whatever. So we don't have a depth chart yet. And all of the guys in this wide receiver room are just unproven. We don't know what to know for this wide receiver room for UCF. So I'm not going to recommend any of them until we get a depth chart. You're just going to want to really look at that before you play any of them. All right, game number 4. We've got Buffalo taking on Minnesota, and I think this is actually like an upset alert spot. I think Buffalo could very well cover the spread in this game. I don't necessarily know if they have the firepower to win, but there's some unknowns with Minnesota. Buffalo's a promising-looking MAC team. I think this is going to be a pretty competitive game. The spread as it is right now is Minnesota minus 18.5 with a game total of 44.5 points, meaning the implied total is about 31-13 in favor of Minnesota. On the Buffalo side, they're going to look a lot like they did last year. And last year they were 9-4, and they were really good offensively at the end of the season last year. The only problem is when they played power forward competition or even independent competition, they did not look good last year. They were great in MAC play. They averaged 39.5 points per game in MAC play offensively. So it's just if they can carry that over, right? Now, last year's starter, CJ Ogbonna, is gone. But in comes Daquan Roberson, who is like literally CJ Ogbonna incarnate. Like, CJ Ogbonna was a very athletic, very talented quarterback who was limited as a passer, but a good runner. Roberson is that as well. He was Avery Johnson's backup last year at Kansas State. He's going to bring that very similar skill set over to Buffalo. He's at $6,600. I think this is far from the best matchup on the slate. Minnesota is probably one of the best defenses on the slate, but that's a very reasonable price tag for a guy who's got a lot of rushing upside. And this team is going to run him. Last year, they ranked 22nd in rush rate. Like, they love to run the ball with their quarterback and with their running backs. This is a good spot for Roberson. At the running back position, they've got Al-Jay Henderson, who's one of the best running backs in all of college football, in my opinion. Very rarely do you see a G5 running back now rush for 1,000 yards, have a lot of success, and stay. And Al-Jay Henderson did, and he's going to be the workhorse again. He ended the season with 5 straight games of 24 DraftKings points or more. Granted, those were all bowl game and conference play. He did not look great against Power 5 competition last year, but, it's a new year. They've kind of redone the offense. In that time, they really figured things out over MAC play last year. It's to be determined how much success he's going to have. But the one thing we do know is that he's going to get the rock, and he's going to get the rock a lot. And that's something that you can't say for a whole lot of the running backs on this slate. The wide receiver position, it's pretty clear for Buffalo, actually. They have listed their depth chart already. Last year's wide receiver 1, Victor Snow, returns. He had 5 games over 17 DraftKings points last year. It's pretty solid. He's going to get a pretty steady dose of targets. Nick McMillan is also listed as a starter. He was pretty good for Buffalo in 2023. Last year, he got hurt after week 1, did not play again. He might eat a little bit into Snow's targets, but those two guys are going to get the ball quite a bit. And then Josiah Gathings is a transfer from UConn. He's not bad either. I would tend to rank him 3rd among the 3 starters, but just name to know he is one of the starters there at wide receiver. Now, for Minnesota, they are switching things up. Now, what's interesting is Minnesota, they retain the same coaching staff as last year offensively, which is pretty much the same as the year before. We think of this Minnesota PJ Fleck era team as being like this ground and pound, row the boat is his whole thing. And they're just this kind of team that just plods, right? Well, last year, they really bucked that trend. They ranked 32nd in the nation in pass rate, which is the highest mark in the PJ Fleck era. It's because they had Max Brosmer at quarterback, and he was okay. Like, he was one of the best Minnesota quarterbacks in the last decade, which isn't saying a whole lot. It's a position that generally isn't the best at Minnesota because they're generally looking to win games running the football and playing defense, right? Drake Lindsey is going to be their starter. I know nothing about him. The only thing that I do know is that they didn't feel the need to go into the portal and try to find somebody better, right? To me, that tells you everything you need to know about Drake Lindsey is they felt comfortable giving him the reins and letting him be the starter. And he's only $6,100. This team might deceptively pass the ball a lot, and they're going up against a MAC team where they're double-digit favorites. It's not a bad spot to play him at DraftKings, in my opinion. The running back position, they've got one of the best running backs in all of college football. His name is Darius Taylor. Now, he is potentially like the RB1 in your best ball drafts or your CFF drafts this year, right? Because he's just really, really good, like super solid. He had 4 games of 30 DraftKings points or more last year, 2 of which were in non-conference play. The big reason why he was so good last year is because of his usage in the receiving game. He was just consistently peppered with targets. He scored 101 total fantasy points just by receiving last year. For comparison, he scored 159 on the ground. So a lot of his production comes from the pass game. So if Drake Lindsey is not going to pass the ball, like checking down to him a whole lot, then he's going to be back to being a touchdown dependent like running back. But I think the possibility is still pretty good that he sees usage in the passing game, given that Lindsey's a new starter and he's been in the system. I also think the possibility of him having a lot of rushing success against a MAC team are pretty good. So I think he's one of the top overall plays on the slate. The question is if you can clear enough salary to play him. For that reason, I will have a lot of lineups with him, but I'm also going to make sure I have some lineups without him. But he's very unquestionably the top running back on the slate. If you were to ask me, hey, Mike, who's going to be the top scoring running back on the slate? My bet would be on Darius Taylor. At the wide receiver position, Minnesota's in a unique situation where last year they had 2 receivers in Daniel Jackson and Elijah Spencer account for over half of the receiving production that they had as a whole team, and they're gone. And we don't have an official depth chart yet because PJ Fleck is like one of these like us against the world culture guys that no, we're never going to tell you anything about injury. We're never going to tell you anything about depth chart. And so we don't really know who's going to start for sure, but I'm willing to make some educated bets. The Logan Loya, who's a UCLA transfer, is going to end up starting. He was okay at UCLA. It was a very limited, successful passing offense the last few years. And then Javon Tracy coming over from Miami, Ohio. He was so good for Miami, Ohio last year. Both of these guys could fit the profile of like Jackson and Spencer. I don't know if they're as good as Jackson and Spencer were, but, got to throw to somebody. And so if you're going to play Drake Lindsey, you're probably going to want to stack one of those 2 guys unless we get an official depth chart in between now and game time, which I would be shocked if we did. All right, we only got 2 games left, y'all. If this video has helped you out, make sure you hit that like button on YouTube. If you're listening on audio, rate and review. It helps me out a ton when you guys do that. I cannot stress enough how much I appreciate it and how much it really helps me out. And I just really, really thankful for you guys when you do that. Also, the customary, if you know anyone who has problem gambling or yourself, make sure you call 1-800-GAMBLER and never bet what you can't afford to lose, especially here in week 1 when there's a whole lot of unknowns going on. All right. Now, for Nebraska and Cincinnati, that's our next game. Nebraska is 6.5-point favorites with a game total of 53.5 points. That means the implied total is about 30-24 in favor of Nebraska. Now, Nebraska is in an interesting spot where about halfway through the year last year, they made Dana Holgorsen the play caller, and he's now like the full-time offensive coordinator and play caller, right? They really upped their pass rate as the year went on. They ended the season ranked 55th in the nation in pass rate. Now, here's the deal, though. Dylan Raiola. My first instinct when I saw this slate was, holy crap, Raiola is mispriced. He's only 7,500. And then I really looked at his game log, and I forgot how bad he was of a DraftKings play last year. And there were games where I was really suckered into playing him and made him like a core play, right? But he never topped 19 DraftKings points in a game last year. You simply can't play a guy at $7,500 if he's not going to top 19 DraftKings points. So let me make the argument for Dylan Raiola. He was a 5-star recruit who was starting as a true freshman, and his offensive play caller switched halfway through the year. He's now still a 5-star recruit, entering year 2 with more experience with his play caller. He should be a lot better. Should. And this is a Big 12 defense in Cincinnati. They're not great defensively. The only downside is he never showed us the upside last year. Never passed for 300 yards in a game. Negative rushing yards on the season. It's not what we like. It's not great, bub. So I don't know. I'm yet to make my decision on it if I'm going to play Raiola or not. But the question is, it's kind of your personal philosophy, right? Are you somebody who is going to trust talent and name recognition and system, or are you somebody who is going to bank on actual production? It's a decision you got to make. I don't know what my decision is going to be yet, but it's a very interesting decision on Dylan Raiola. Now, at the running back position, there's not a whole lot of deciding to be made here. It's Emmett Johnson. He was pretty much an RB2 for most of the year last year behind Dante Dowdell. He's now at Kentucky, and at the end of the year last year, Johnson was really good. He kind of became the team's RB1 as the season went on. Ended the season with 4 straight games over 15 DraftKings points. Ended the season with 4 straight games of 5 catches or more. Very involved in the passing game. Now he's got very little competition for carries. I think this is a great spot for Emmett Johnson, $7,500. He's one of my favorite running back plays on the slate. This is honestly, the more I look at it, this is a slate. It's a great running back slate. It's a slate where I'm probably going to be playing a running back in the flex spot. At the wide receiver position, Nebraska, the good news is we know exactly who the starters are going to be. Ja'Cory Barner led the team in receiving yards last year, but ironically, never scored a receiving touchdown. He did have 3 rushing touchdowns. So he's going to be kind of your low ADOT, your screens and jet sweeps guy. So, plenty of opportunity for him to rack up fantasy points because he's going to get some volume. But the guy you really want is Dane Key. He's a transfer from Kentucky, and y'all, he was really good at Kentucky. He just really struggled to have a quarterback that could consistently give him the ball. He's really high priced, but he could really pay it off in a hurry if this offense does have the passing success that we think it's going to have with year 2 of Dylan Raiola. Now, Neziah Hunter is a transfer from Cal. He's the 3rd starter at $5,000. I think he's a great pivot because I think people who are playing this passing offense are going to play Key and Barney. And if you play Hunter, you're going to have leverage on those guys and you're going to have salary savings as well. Now, on the Cincinnati side, they retained the same coaching staff after just a very meh season last year. Brendan Sorsby is returning at quarterback. He's a former Indiana transfer who played pretty well for Cincinnati last year, or at least from a fantasy perspective, he was pretty well. He was like a really solid cash game play last year. And the reason why is because you have a team that's playing with a decent tempo, with a decent pass rate, 53rd in the nation in pass rate last year. And they went up against a bunch of bad defenses, and he has a little bit of rushing upside also. Rushed for over 400 yards last year, 9 touchdowns. So there's a decent amount of upside with Sorsby. Last year, he also showed his high floor. He only had 3 games under 20 fantasy points. He had 2 games over 38 fantasy points. So there's just a really good argument to be made that Sorsby is a really good DraftKings play because of the floor he gives you, because of the upside that he gives you. Now, granted, I don't like the price tag all the way up there at $9,300 against a defense that's probably better than anybody he saw all last year, if we're being honest. But, he's a pretty good play. He's just a pretty steady Eddie DraftKings play. And I got no problem with putting him in your lineups at $9,300. The running back spot, Tawee Walker is coming over from Wisconsin. Now, I don't know. I've always been kind of lukewarm on Tawee Walker because he's a former walk-on at Oklahoma. It's not like he has a whole lot of recruiting pedigree. He did suffer some injuries last year at Wisconsin, had some big games, had some small games. I don't know what to make of him. He's just a hard eval. And then you got Evan Pryor, who was the RB2 last year, who's also returning. I think you're looking at a committee that's maybe like a 55, 45, 60, 40 split-ish in favor of Tawee Walker. And I'm just not interested. I think there's better running back plays on this slate. The wide receiver spot, we do know who the starters are going to be. Jeff Caldwell is a transfer from Lindenwood who got all of the hype in spring camp. And then Cyrus Allen is a transfer from Texas A&M who has gotten all the hype in fall camp. So those 2 receivers are starting out wide. They're going to be pretty good. And then you've also got Caleb Goody, the Colorado State transfer, who is expected to come in and start as well. And then the tight end Joe Royer was really good last year, really solid option if you're playing in like a tight end league, just racking up double-digit fantasy points games. He's also going to start at tight end as well. Now, last game, we got Miami, Ohio taking on Wisconsin. This one is not a great game environment, y'all. The spread is Wisconsin minus 17.5 points with a game total of 39.5, meaning the implied total is about 28-11 in favor of Wisconsin. Like I said, it's an ugly game. Miami, Ohio. They're the team that I'm just gonna like dub as their nickname for me is gonna be Return of the Mac, like the old 90s rap song, right? Miami retains the same coaching staff last year, but they rank dead last nationally in returning offensive production, meaning they are replacing their starting quarterback, they're replacing 4 starting offensive linemen, and nearly all of their receiving production. So how do they do that? They go and they find transfers that either started at a Power 4 school or started in the MAC, and they just filled everything with transfers, and they're going to see if it's going to work out. One of those transfers is DeQuan Finn, who is returning to the MAC. He was previously a really, really good MAC quarterback at Toledo, leading his team to the MAC championship game, dual threat, ton of fantasy upside. Last year, he went to Baylor, started the first game, didn't really pan out after that, lost his job to Sawyer Robertson. But he was really good the last time he was in the MAC. And I have a feeling that come November, I'm going to be playing DeQuan Finn on some Tuesday and Wednesday nights. But I don't think this is a great spot to play him going up against Wisconsin in week 1. The running back position for Miami, Ohio, it is going to be Kenny Tracy, who has been in the system, didn't play at all last year. I don't have much on him. I'm not interested because of the matchup. A receiver, maybe have a little bit of interest in Deion Colsey. Maybe a little bit. He's from Notre Dame. He's supremely athletically talented, big target. He's going to be their wide receiver one, $4,900. Maybe worth a look. Their other 2 starters are going to be Brady Simmons and Cam Perry. Simmons is $3,000 minimum, and then Cam Perry is only $3,900. I just getting you guys the names you're going to need to know, but not interested in playing them. On the Wisconsin side, this is a team you got to have some interest in, okay? Because of the spread, the total, the fact that they should have a massive advantage on the offensive line, they're going to be able to kind of do what they want in this game, in my opinion. And what they want to do is run the ball. They got rid of Phil Longo, who passed the ball a little too much for them in Wisconsin. Because, when you're Wisconsin, you got to run the football. You got to hop in the eye. You got to run power, right? That's just what you do in Wisconsin. So they hired Kansas's offensive coordinator, Jeff Grimes, who is going to want to run the football. Kansas ranked 23rd in rush rate in all of college football last year. They've got a quarterback, Billy Edwards Jr., coming over from Maryland, that he had some decent rushing upside at Maryland. But I think he's going to be kind of more of this just kind of game manager type deal that we've kind of seen at Wisconsin over years past, where, you have your Scott Tolzie's and, golly, I can't think of any others because every Wisconsin quarterback after that has been pretty much the same. There was a Tanner McAvoy at some point, Joel Stavy. Oh, gosh, I bet I could name more if I sat here and thought about it. But, yeah, they're just all the same. They're just handoff machines. So not super interested. I mean, it's a great matchup. He's got some upside, but I just don't think this is an offense that's going to really utilize him a whole lot. The running back position, Dylan Jones could be a core play for me. I've been drafting Dylan Jones a ton in best ball. He has been in the system, but he was hurt last year. And all of the camp buzz from spring and summer has been about Dylan Jones, about how much he's improved, how he's gotten bigger, how he's gotten faster, and how he's going to be the RB1 and how much they're going to run the ball. And so to me, you've got RB1, great matchup, great system, supposedly a better player. Like, he just checks all the boxes at $5,700. That's a cheap price tag. Gonna be playing me some Dylan Jones this week. Then at the wide receiver position, we know that the 3 starters are going to be Trek Kekahuna, Vinny Anthony, and Chris Brooks Jr. Those are going to be the 3 starters out wide. At the tight end position, Acker and Mason are listed as the OR starters. Mason's a transfer from Missouri State. He was very productive there. I think he's a pretty good receiving weapon. He might be worth a look at $3,100. Acker is kind of like a blocking tight end, if we're being honest. he might not even play. If he doesn't play, then Lance Mason looks like a decent value. In terms of the 3 starting receivers, Kekahuna was a big-time recruit who really splashed for some big plays for them last year. Could he finally take the next step in development? Maybe. Vinny Anthony was really their wide receiver 1 down the stretch last year. I believe Will Pauling started dealing with some injuries, and they really needed to find some guys, and Vinny Anthony stepped up. He absolutely could be a guy that sees a lot of volume this year. Those guys might make my player pool, but like I said, my main interest from Wisconsin is going to be Dylan Jones, man. I'm all in on Dylan Jones. All right, but that is going to do it here for this episode. We broke down all 6 of the Thursday night games, told you everything you need to know in order to build some winning DraftKings lineups. Remember, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. That way you can be back with us for the episode about the Friday slate, as well as the episode about the Saturday main slate, as well as the live shows that we got going on later in the week that are going to be discussing Saturday's main slate as well. So if you're subscribed, you'll know when all those go down, and you'll be able to be here with us to break them down. But that is going to do it here for this episode, y'all. If this video helped you in any way, make sure you hit the like button on YouTube. Make sure you rate and review if you're listening on audio. Like I said, I cannot stress enough how much it helps me and how much I do appreciate it. But that is going to do it here. Remember, if you do want to know who actually makes my lineups, head on over to Patreon, patreon.com/Mike'sMoneyPicks. If you are looking for a community to be a part of where you can talk college football, DFS, and other sports as well, join the Fantasy Corner Discord. Link is in the description. But that is going to do it here, y'all. That is the Thursday slate. Like I said, kind of in my whole little food metaphor, if last Saturday week 0 was the amuse bouche, right, the little kind of palate warm up, then I guess you could say Thursday's like the appetizer, right? Like it's the buffalo shrimp, it's the bacon wrapped scallops or whatever, whatever appetizer you like, right? I'm more of a dip guy when it comes to appetizers. I could really go for like a pretzel, like the big old pretzel that they can bring you for an appetizer. I love those. Anyway, now I'm just thinking about food, so I need to go ahead and get on out of here. Yeah, I think this is the perfect appetizer for the Saturday slate. Saturday is going to be the main course. We're going to be back breaking that down later this week, but I do feel like we just did a good job of covering all 6 games for Thursday's slate and prepping you guys to build your DraftKings and FanDuel lineups. So thank you guys for watching the list to this point. Best of luck to you guys on the Thursday slate, and I will see you guys next time.